Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on a Nor. This is the OFL30. It's a large size reel. It's high speed. It's at 4.3 to 1. And it's a level wind reel. So it's got a lot of features that folks like and enjoy in being able to work with a larger reel, but also having the convenience of the level wind feature. This one's been used quite a bit. You can see some salt and that is flaking on the spool. We'll clean most of that up. But I want to show you how this reel comes apart, how you service it, and how you keep it running for years to come. Well, we're going to start by removing the exterior pieces. And as I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you do subscribe to my channel, please make sure that you hit that notification button. That will tell you when I'm posting videos, and well, you can make a choice as to whether it's one you want to see. Today we're working on a large offshore reel. Well, tomorrow it might be a freshwater spinning reel or a low profile bait caster. It's whatever comes in my shop. And I think you'll appreciate some of the videos if you like the art of reel repair, if you like to learn more about fishing reels, maybe even if you're just considering buying one and you're looking at your options. So I would encourage you to subscribe, and I thank all the people who have subscribed to my channel and the ones that are using this as a forum. It really is appreciated. All right, we removed the handle. I'm going to just put a little bit of oil into the seam where the handle knob joins the handle blank. And then I'm putting all of my pieces that I remove into a parts tray. I use the bottom of a fast food container for that. Lately anyway, I've used all kinds of things, but today we're using that. All right, this one's seen a lot of use and it hasn't seen a lot of service. How do I know that? You can look at this little spacer here from the handle, and well, it's got a lot of rust on it, rust and dirt. And if it's behind the handle, it's everywhere else in this reel. A lot of things that happen with saltwater reels is they're not sealed on the conventional reels. Water will get in on both sides of the spool. You can see a little bit of flaking going on with the paint. There's a little bit of greening going on where that spool adjuster knob is. It kind of tells you that the reel hasn't been cared for, but we'll get it going again. We'll give it a second chance. With the handle removed now, you can back off the star adjuster. When you do that, I encourage you to start taking pictures, because if you don't know the reel and you're not taking pictures, it's easy to get things confused. If you take pictures, use your cell phone, use a digital camera, take a video if you like, whatever. Just know that you have a reference point for when you forget about things or when you have a question. Well, it's right there at your disposal. Sometimes things are not easy to find. I didn't go out and look for the schematic for this one on the internet, but you may not find it. I mean, that's kind of a thing. And of course, the schematic is a pictorial diagram of the reel. But if you can't find it, now that's not going to help you get out of a jam, possibly. And here's a reason why. You can look here, and you'll see that we have this little click mechanism going here. And once you take it off, which we'll do right now, and lay it down, well, you go back to reassemble, you say, did it go this way? Or did it go this way? Right? Well, the picture tells you that it goes that way, the empty side facing up. But why risk things? Just go ahead and do that. You'll find that it's a whole lot easier. Well, I'm not sure what this little bezel collar is here, and we're going to see if we can't take the reel apart. But let's answer that question. I don't know what it is, so let's go take it apart. It may be a way that you can change the drag washers without taking the reel apart. That would be a wonderful thing. And I'm going to just go ahead and remove these screws. When I take these screws out, I want to put them into my parts tray. They're small screws and they can get lost rather easily. So it's not my intention to lose them. And I don't know where I would get a replacement part right now. I have an idea. Nor was just, well, within the last year or so, it was acquired by Pure Fishing. And I guess I can call the Pure Fishing hotline and they can tell me where I can get parts if the reel is still supported. All right, those three came out, and now we've got a roller. And well, it's a good thing I took it off, because we can see that there's a bunch of accumulated sand in here. Other than that, it just looks like a basic bezel We have a couple of tension washers. Those help the sensitivity of that star adjuster. They were facing both ways. It looks like we have a rubber seal. And this is, again, another good place to take the pictures so that you know how to reinstall, because you have to get all this stuff off to remove the gear. So 2 spacers, a rubber seal, just checking the bottom of it, a shield washer for the bearing, and then the bearing. And you can take that bearing in or not. It will come out with the stack on the other side. Well, I want to take a moment here and just brush that off. I'm going to remove the reel from my bench because I don't want that sand on my bench. It's okay if it gets on the floor, I'll vacuum that up, but it's not okay if it gets on my bench. There's also some greening going on here. I'm going to grab a wire brush, see if I can't knock some of that off. No, I can do some of it. Can't do a lot of it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to spray that and with the penetrating oil. I'll just let it sit. Maybe it can dissolve it that way. All right, let's take these. We know the order of these. We've taken a picture of it. Yeah, I'm taking pictures. It's the video camera. Got a little bit of sand and the like on the collar. Why don't we take a moment to clean that up? I'm going to use a rod and reel cleaner. I use Penn Precision rod and reel cleaner. I guess it's okay now that Finor is part of the Penn brands, right? Or the Pure Fishing brands, which is Penn is one of them. I guess it's their flagship brand. It's kind of a joke. You can use this on any reel. It shines it up nicely, right? Oh, it certainly looks a lot better than when it came off. I'm going to put that collar right in my tray where I took the other 3 pieces. Let's go ahead and remove the side plate then. I see 1, 2, 3 screws. Let's turn it over. I don't see any screws under here. So chances are this whole thing is going to come off with the 3 screws. So let's get the right screwdriver to match. This is a Phillips head screw. And what I like to do with these, I want to make sure that I lay these down on my bench first so that I can determine whether all 3 are the same. When I took that one off, I just noticed there's a small kind of plastic washer behind it. It's a little bit of a water seal. So when it comes off, make sure you grab it. You can see it here. It's just kind of riding in the back there. If you can't see it, know that it's there. And if it doesn't come out, that means it's in that little cavity in the case. And it does your best to make sure that when you do this thing, you go back and reinstall them that way if you didn't find them. All 3 of these came out. All 3 of these are the same size. So they're destined for another corner of my parts tray. And we should be able to remove this now. There you go. Yeah, well, it got sealed up because there's a bunch of that technical stuff called crud that's lined here. And I better have a spring under here. I do. The spring is sitting in the cavity there. So there's 2 springs on this. Take a picture right now. The other spring belongs on this side. This is a good place to take a picture. This looks like a very well engineered and high quality reel. I'm going to bet that this is a stainless steel gear. It's got an instant anti-reverse clutch on it. You can see how the worm gear and the yoke are set up, and you can also see how the anti-reverse, or I'm not the anti-reverse, the jack that's going to move that gear in and out is positioned. Also notice you have a hole in this right here, and when you go to reinstall, this is sitting up. That hole is going to correspond with the stud that is right here, and this is in the position. So this is how we left it. We're going to move this down. I'm just going to hold that spring in case it shoots. That's kind of a funky spring there. And I kind of don't like the balance, but I guess that's the way it's designed. I'm going to bring it back up. We left it in the up position, so when you go to reinstall, this should be in the up position, and you're going to find that it needs to match in order to do that. Well, there was a little bit of junk on the inside of the case rim here, but other than that, the side plate is clean. And that's what you want to do here. Well, we can see that there's some sand. So again, I'm going to buff this off to the side. I don't want that on my desk if I can avoid it, because it will transfer to your next project. So get that off, out of the way. Interestingly enough, the sand was kind of gathered there. All you have to do here is to oil the trip mechanism, or the trip lever that's going to allow free spool. And we can put a little bit of oil into that adjuster cap. I don't see a bearing there, but we can put the oil into the adjuster cap there. All right, picture time. One of the things you want to notice is you have an instant anti-reverse clutch, but you also have the old style finger anti-reverse dog sitting on the post here. Take your picture, and then let's take this out. We'll lay this out on the table first. You have a bearing, then you have the AR, and you have the AR clutch, and you have the center for that clutch. I've been getting a lot of questions lately to oil or not oil, grease or not grease. And my position is clean, no grease. Make sure that it's clean on the inside. And notice that there's two sides to this AR clutch. There's a metal capsulated side and there's a plastic insert side. The insert side belongs down. So this is how it came out, and that's how it's going to go back in. So those two. And once you have those, we can oil this bearing. Now, when I tested the reel, everything was working fine. So you want to test your bearings if you haven't done that. Make sure that they're performing well. In big gear, that's why you have that override in terms of the 4.3 to 1. Let's see if we can lift this up without a click ratchet. We can. It's a beautifully designed reel. This is not a low-end reel. Underneath we have a drag washer and a click ratchet, and we also have an inner bearing. So let's oil that inner bearing. And this usually comes out in unison. It should be a single piece that brings both of these out. You can't get the one out without the other. I'm just checking here. There's nothing holding that dog on. So I'm just going to use a screwdriver to see if we can't lever that up and out. It's just sitting on a post here. So that's the next point off. There we go. All right, you want to take care that you don't expand the fingers on the dog. But this has got a lot of dirt in it, and you do need to clean all of that off to have that effective. Now that's a fail-safe. The first part of this is going to be the AR clutch. This is the fail-safe. So if you're fighting a big fish, you go back to the old way of doing things. Underneath here we have that click ratchet. Mop that off. This is a plastic or a Teflon type of a washer that doesn't require anything. And then here, so this is the bottom of the case, and this has a mounting screws to hold the flange on, because you're going to extend that gear down, and it also holds in the shaft and the bearing. Well, the bearing is here, it's clean, so you do not need to remove that piece. If you notice that it was all kinds of grease filled and dirty in that, by all means get these three pieces out of there, pull the whole shaft up, clean the bearing out and put it back. In this case, we just need to re-oil. We saw that fall out, but we had a picture before. We know where it goes. It goes there. If it fell out, let's get it out. Put that into the parts tray so we don't lose it. All right. The only two things left then is to service the gear set on this side. So we're going to pull the gear set here. I'm going to clean the yoke. And this one does not have any kind of bevels or that to say that one is different than the other. This is a big, hefty pinion gear here. You'll notice the wide side that we took off, and this side is going to match with your spool. It'll ride on the shoulders. You want to clean out the grooves in this gear. I'm going to use another hard brush for that. And if you saw some accumulated grease or something, go ahead and you can put a squirt of that penetrating oil on just to make sure it's clean. This one's very clean. The reel, if anything, on this is dry as opposed to anything else. Notice I put a paper towel under me there. I do that so that I can keep the dirt off the bench. If you're running into any trouble, go ahead and use something that will fit into the grooves here. Maybe the blade of a utility knife, maybe your pick, a small screwdriver, whatever. Make sure that the grooves are clean and check those grooves. Make sure that they're all uniform, that they're not chipped or cracked or anything. This one's fine. All right, we're going to just stay with that for a moment. Put a little bit of grease onto the shoulder here. Reset the gear. Let's go ahead and grab the grease brush and get a good amount of grease. You don't have to fill it all the way up, but get a good amount of grease into the pinion gear. Remember, you're going to grease the main gear as well, and between the two of them, that's going to spread all the grease that's needed there. With that set, remember, this is the outside, this other side fits into the spool. So let's go ahead and put this back on so we don't lose track of it. We can also do the same while we have the grease brush out, a little bit of grease into the channels where that jack is going to ride, and you can go ahead and put that jack in as well. Now, of course, what you want to do here is make sure that the reel is seated up at this point, because if it's not, it's obviously going to fall down. What you have to do here, I'm noticing it's riding high, and that's because it's not seated onto the spool. So just turn this until it matches that shoulder on the spool, then it will pull in. All right, we're going to leave that there for a moment. We've cleaned up the anti-reverse ratchet. Go ahead and put the anti-reverse dog on. It's going to ride in that direction, so if this is looking like a saw blade, the teeth are coming at you. And then we can go ahead and put that back on here after we have set the pinion gear. And then you need to make sure that the square on the gear shaft matches with the square on the click ratchet. There we go, we're in. I think we're in. A little bit off to the side. And then you can test it. Run it this way, which is the way you'll pedal the reel, and as you pull, it should pull back in. See it pulling in? That's how it works. That's the fail-safe. All right, we had that clear plastic washer there. If it was dirty, wipe it off. We did that. Next up was that burring that went on the back end. How did you know that? Well, if you didn't remember it, you took a picture of it. That's how you remember it. Let's go over this big main gear then. This gear looks like it's got Carbon Tex in it for washers. Carbon Tex is a hard surfaced washer. Just make sure as you do this that you don't break them. They're easily shattered, and if they're easily shattered, well, then you're off to the parts supplier to get replacements. There's no give in those. It's not like a leather washer. Mop up the old grease that may be laying in the channels. Same thing on the back. Now again, this is, if there's anything to be said about this reel, it's everything dried out or evaporated. Do the same thing here that we did with the other one. Go ahead and put your gear down, pull through to make sure that all of those channels for the old grease are cleaned. Inspect the teeth while you're doing this. If you see any that are chipped or cracked, you're going to have to replace the main gear. But again, this is a very substantial main gear. I'm going to have to look up the pricing on this thing. I don't know what the original new pricing was. My guess is this one didn't come cheap. All right, let's put the grease back on the gear. And again, you don't need to get the grease in every tooth. Give it a fair amount, but don't overload it. The overload is just going to spray off, or centrifugal force is just going to push it off, and it'll wind up laying in the case, and well, that doesn't need any lubrication. I've opened up cases, as many folks know, that have way too much grease in there. And there you go. Seat it that it meshes with your pinion gear and that the bearing is on the inside of the main gear. Carbon-Tex washers don't get anything. We can wipe them off. We have a multi-disc system here. It looks like an 8-disc washer set. That's going to give you a lot of drag. What you're going to do is you're going to take the 2 keyed washers. They're going to go top and bottom. So you put a Carbon-Tex or a washer in first. Then the second one. Middle washer is going to be the one that's the eared washer. It has the 2 points. It has a circular hole in the middle. They go into the slots in the main gear. Another washer. The top keyed washer. Another washer. You have the last of the keyed washers sits up top. One more washer, so this is a 10 washer set, I think. I have to go back and add that up now. The cap washer is the one that has the bell on it. It rides high. All right, well, if you remember from our picture taking or otherwise, the next thing in then is that it's an anti-reverse clutch. You can put it in with the collar and the clutch. And we went with the bearing. And we went with the bearing shield. Okay, we should be ready to go then. I just tilted this over. That's the picture that you should have. Now we have that seal. And actually what we can do now is we can go ahead and put the main cap back on. Let's do that first. All right, we've oiled the trip lever, we've cleaned the case, we've oiled your spool adjuster, and the next thing up then is to seat this. And you remember what we said, you have to get the stud here into that hole there or your free spool release won't work. I do want to put one more dab of grease right onto the end of the spool. We're going to take that spool out in a moment, but let's just put it there for now. And we should be able to mesh the case in now. You got 2 things going on here. You got the case going on, and you also have the anti-reverse has to be seated properly. Okay, so I wanted to do 2 things. I wanted to check the free spool release to make sure that the lever is working. It appears that it is, and I want to make sure that I have a nice tight solid seal on the case. So we do. Let's go back to the, oops, that was an oops. See, that's where a parts tray is going to help. I didn't put the yoke springs in here. I need to do that now. So I just looked in the corner of my tray and there they were. All right, so let's do this again then. We have this up, have everything loaded. You may have to play with the case because you're going to see those that there are 4 studs here. You're going to have to seat that anti-reverse properly. So let's do this again. Keep it square. You may have to turn this. You want to make sure that you snap in with your handle and that everything is nice and tight all the way around, nice and clear of that. All right, let's check that now. All right, now you see that the spool shaft is turning here, and if we go to reverse or free spool, that shaft should not turn. So we have that stud loaded properly in that case. All right, well, we've done an awful lot here so far. We're getting close to completing the gear side, and the next step, of course, would be to service the line drive, the pawl, and the other side of the case. But let's close this up first. Best way to do that is to kind of work in sections on a reel. That way you don't have parts laying all over the place, and well, you don't forget as much as you go about the reassembly. I've got some reel projects in the bag that have come in. Not somebody, but a lot of folks have taken every piece and part off the reel, confused which goes where, what side, and so on, and well, that just makes life a little bit more difficult. Is that seal that we were talking about? That goes on. And we mentioned you've got belled washers here. They're not flat. And these were setting opposed, so you got the curve coming up on the first one, facing down on the second one. That's where we took this off at that point, so let's go ahead and put that little beauty ring back on. Go to our parts tray and get the 3 of these. Well, if you have any questions on this reel, or maybe any reel, maybe you're wondering, the history of Nor, or maybe you're working on a Nor reel, or maybe you're working on something else, and while it's not going according to plan, something's not working right, well then if you leave that question in the comment section, I'll try and get you back on track, or I'll try and get you additional information. I'm not going to pretend to know everything, I don't, but I will try to help you if I can get things squared off. Okay, it's a beautiful reel. This has got a lot of drag power in it. The Nor Offshore series, that's what this is not the offshore angler that is sold by Bass Pro. Just be aware of that. They both use the term offshore, but they are not the same reel. Okay, next one up was that little click. Remember what we said? It goes up. There's a little washer that sits inside of that. And with that up, the star adjuster can go on now. Just make sure that you start this by hand. One of the issues with this seems to be that you cross-thread it. So the way to avoid the cross-threading is to start it by hand and look to make sure that the pieces are parallel to the reel case. There was just some ugly junk on there. We decided just to buff that off. They used a 4-row steel wool to do that. Some of it is kind of corrosion, not much you can do with that. Alright, so what I'm trying to do here is make sure that I start this where it's parallel to the case. The back rim here and the back rim there. Or front rim there. Once you do that, you can load that down. And that sits inside of this little trim ring there. So another way to try and get some of that water out of the reel, or keep the water out of the reel. Alright, well we're just going to use that steel wall, and I think we're just stuck with that greening that's going on in here. Let's go over and service the back end of this, and let's service that line guide. Normally what you would do is you would take that cap off. Well, notice we got a bar that's blocking that, so we'll show you how to do that in addition to making sure that the back side and the spool is serviced on this. Let's see, there's the same 3 screws. I'm not seeing that water seal there, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I could put the handle on at this point, or I could wait. I'm waiting. Just taking the 3 screws out right now. Hopefully this one isn't as stuck as the other side was stuck, but we do know that there was some parts of that case. This one's a little tight for sure. Should be able to get that off with some, there we go. Just a little bit of strength. Okay, we're going to pull the spool out. I wanted to do that because we have the bearing under here, so let's make sure we oil the bearing. The rest of the reel you soften the other side. If the reel is dirty, this is an ideal time to clean the inside of this. You'll never get in there with the spool. And let's show you that line guide assembly then. So we have a gear, the worm gear. It's held on by a C-clip if you need to remove that. Here's that bar, and that bar, yep, I remember this. That bar is screwed in, so it won't fall out like maybe on the Pen 300, 320s, 310s, 320s. You have that crossbar that just falls out when you take the back case. That's not the case here. I'm not sure if we're fully through here. We should be now. Yeah. And we have some just some general dirt kind of holding that tight case, so I'm going to just use the pliers to grab that a little bit better, pull that out. I'm not sure what this is, but we're going to buff that down. We're going to use that 4-row steel wool again, trying to take whatever dirt and debris we can get off of this, off of it. Some of that is scarring from hooks and other things that have hit this during its history. But overall, That cleaned up okay. That's going to go into my parts tray for a moment as we go to remove the pawl cover so that we can service the pawl cap. That's a screw cap. That's a crusty old screw cap. Make sure that I have the right screwdriver. And we can see that it's got the same greening on it. When I see greening on reels like this, I generally start to think that this has been sitting in a rod rack on a boat, probably as a trolling reel, and that all the sea spray has come up on that. All right, the cap is off. The pawl is right behind it. You can tap generally, pull that out. What you want to examine on this is the shoulders and the points of the pawl. These shoulders have a little bit of dried something on there. That's going to prevent it from operating smoothly, so get a scraper or something, make sure that that's cleaned off. Check the inside of the worm gear. I'm not seeing any obvious dirt or debris in there, so I'm going to oil the worm gear. If you wanted to, you could pull that worm gear out. You don't have to. I'm going to reset that pawl now. It's a tight fit. You won't see it because my big hands are there. When that pawl is sitting like that, that's not operating properly. Take your finger and hold pressure to the pawl. Oh, that's driven by the spool. Silly me. There you go. Just turn the worm gear, and when it pulls in like this, then it's properly set. I don't think there's much we can do with this. There's a little plastic plating on it. And try the steel. We'll see if it knocks any of it off. That's a hard one to get at because of that bar. Guess we can do what we can here. And then a drop of oil onto the thread before you rethread this, because there was a little bit of resistance there as well. Well, if you're with me so far, I thank you for that. This is a pretty extensive one. But at the end of the day, what this is really showing you is that it doesn't take forever to service your reel. But if you want your reel to last forever, you better service it. How's that? All right, just clean that off. Remember I said we put a little bit of grease on that stud there earlier. I'm going to go back and grease that again. You want to grease it as much as you can because it's traveling through a few things. It's traveling through your pinion gear, and it's resting in the spool adjuster. You do not need to touch any of this, and you do not need to service these plastic gears, but you do need to check to make sure all of the teeth are in all of the gears and that it turns nice and smooth. A little drop of oil won't hurt it, but greasing that won't help it. It's self-lubricating. All right, there's a little bit of stuff on the back end here, so let's just get that out as a good practice. That's why the case was coming out a little hard. It's it's a little bit of dried salts, and they most likely have come that way because of the sitting in that rod holder. You can also take a moment here. I was going to say buff it out, but this has got saltwater rash on it. Can't get that off. What is that? That's when the wet line has gotten in there. The line hasn't been dried out or replaced, and the salt starts to eat at anything it can, and you get boat rash, and that's kind of what this is. And I guess to a lesser extent, that's what the greening on those knobs has been in that. All right, this is all reinstalled now. Let's take our cover. That should mesh easily. That's what I wanted to do. Drop of oil onto your three-spool clipper, both sides. That should keep that running. Let's go ahead and put that back on. If that didn't snap in right away, it means that you have the plastic gear not meshing properly with the worm gear. All you'd have to do is turn the spool a little bit to correct that. Oops, that was another oops. I got two oops in this. That's not right. All right, we got to put the bar back in. That's where that Parts tray helps so much. You just have to look in there and you say, well, I forgot that piece. All right, screw this back in. And we can put the cover on again. Trying to get ahead of myself here. I recognize it's been a little bit of a long video. Let's go ahead and do this again. This is how you would test to make sure that you're doing good with that. Go to your tray and get your side plate screws. And I noticed that those little plastic washers did come out with these. So, in case you were wondering. Let's go ahead and tighten these down. I don't recommend using a mechanical screwdriver for the tightening down process. That, especially with cases that are graphite cases or plastic cases or like, they can over torque the case and result in binding. All right, now we can come back to this side. We have the washer that goes on. It's kind of it's a shim between the star adjuster and the handle. The handle can go on next. Now, if you're doing this service for someone other than yourself, make sure you go back to look at the picture, see if it was on the high leverage handle or the medium side. This is one that I own. I managed to purchase it as a part of a lot, and I like to set it on the lower leverage piece. There we go. Again, hand thread this, because if you do cross thread it, you're going to be out of luck. Go ahead and grab the wrench, tighten that down, and you're going to have to play with this one now. There's 2 tie-down screws. Aim for one of them, and we missed. See how we did with the other one. All right, that needs to be tightened a little bit more. This way you have to play with it to align the handle nut with the tie-down screw. We got it that time. You can see the alignment. And hopefully there's only one more piece left in this now. We've left a couple of pieces in there already. We left that the springs in when we went to put the case in the first time. And we left the bar, the crossbar out. I think we got it this time. Tighten this down. Turn over the tray, make sure nothing falls out. We're good. All right, so where are we? We're in free spool right now. Spin it. Make sure that your line guide is working fine. We didn't put a drop of oil on that top crossbar. We can do that. Spin the reel. See how it casts. If you want it to adjust it so that it spins slower, tighten that in. If you want to let it kind of work it easier, roll it back out a little bit with that spool adjuster. Let's put it over to the gear side. Oh, that's a nice reel. I don't think I knew what I was getting when I got this, but that's it. There you go. This is the Nor Offshore L. I'm going to assume the L means level wind. 30 size. It's got a large capacity. It's a great trolling reel. It's got the convenience of the line guide mechanism, and it's held on sturdily by the crossbar that goes through that plastic carrier there. But overall, I think it's a beautiful reel. This one's going to get a second chance to go fishing again. Just going to do mop up here. If it was dirty, you could use the that same rod and reel cleaner that we did before, and that'll certainly help keep it dressed up for quite some time, and it will prevent some of the corrosion that we see that has occurred on this reel already. Well, that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed that. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you've done to keep us safe during the pandemic. It's truly appreciated. To everybody, please stay well, stay watching. I wish you the best of fishing, and please have a great day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.